somebody on.
Anyway, there's one person that dissatisfied with everything. I can tell you who it is. You may know him.
I'll get those up for you. No problem.
Don't you think all the very dissatisfied
I've
with
got,
that?
well, I can put them, if you will give me, let's see,
See?
one.
No, see, that's a
Give me
scale of
a
1 to
couple
5.
more.
If they mark it, all they gotta do is mark it. That's what it would be.
So, if I ask this question, the city's parks and recreation system, 5 people were very satisfied.
That would be 5 points.
And what about don't know?
It's 9 points.
Almost buy a motorcycle.
See, it's uniform. You went, one person went, but don't know all the way through.
Alan would.
Yeah, I'll put those in another phase over there, the new phase. Do that. But thanks for that email on the Link City. I had a big argument with my wife.
Well, there's never
I'm
any-
normally wrong,
Anything saying that
and,
there's more than
at least
that.
in her eyes, but when I'm right, boy, I just danced around. I said, hey.
That's just, if you go back to the top. See, they're saying
Well,
Yeah, is it 6 o'clock yet?
yeah.
1 to 5.
Well, but where's your phone at? Where's the 9 come in?
My phone says 5:59.
I mean, 9 people don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't know.
See how they-
Well, they never tell us then how many people.
Okay, let's call this meeting to order. Notice of an open work session of the City Council of the City of North Kansas City, Missouri, February 21st, 2017. Mr. Eric. Oh, he don't.
I'm going to sub for him for the next however many minutes. Good evening, everybody. Wanted to use this work session to introduce the idea again of doing a North Kansas City community survey, and as was done in 2012, this would be done by, recommended to be done by the ETC Institute. So it has been every bit of 4 years, going on 5 since we did the last. Generally, it's recommended you try to do this every 2 years. So it's certainly time to do it again. And basically, we had budgeted $15,000 to do it in the 2017 budget, and they're suggesting they can do it for $14,950. So we're under budget here with that. Basically, again, what we're trying to do, especially now that this will be our first, the 2012 was the very first time we did it. So one of the things we can get out of doing the next one is not only comparison to the other communities like we did last time, but we can compare our own progress on our own improvement or things to be improved upon and that kind of thing. So this will be make those comparisons. So a lot of the questions are very similar to what they would have been in 2012. We had a handful in 2012 that were kind of specific to that time that we went through and culled those out because the issues just weren't there anymore, or we felt like we got the information we needed. So you were provided both surveys, if you wanted to kind of take a comparison there. And we haven't really added too many extra, and maybe it's not really added so much as maybe modified towards kind of where we're at today, and maybe reforming our questions a little bit in terms of communication methods and things like that were just a little bit in a than we were back in 2012. So this version of it tries to take that into account. So definitely is recommended, though, the questions, for the most part, the stock questions try to be very similar to the last time, so you get those comparisons. But there is a capability here for asking some specific ones, and we're certainly interested tonight in wondering if the council has anything on their mind about some questions you would like to see. One thing we thought we would try to do, you may remember last time there was some information kind of segregated by mapping and some GIS data there. We suggested this time maybe it could be consolidated even a little bit more and done by ward, just in case pick up interesting differences between wards on certain topics or whatever. We're small enough that seems like that might be helpful. So that's the introduction. I guess the other thing we would say is we would probably at this point suggest the survey start after the April election. So that council kind of gets to see the new data. So really, that's kind of the intro I have for you. This is Jason Morato, representing ETC, so he can certainly answer any questions you might have over, how some of this stuff is done or things like that. But that's what I would have for you for the intro.
Rick, go ahead.
I just, how many people responded to the last one? I can't remember.
Ooh, good question.
So our goal last time was to get at least 300 completed surveys, and that would be our goal this time as well. And last time we had 351 completed surveys. So we got, 50 more than our minimum goal.
That's it, the number you received, or the number that you?
That's the number of completed surveys. We actually sent the survey out to about 1,800 households last time, and we do about the same number this time. The average response rate is about 12 to 15%. So that was a pretty good response rate we got last time.
If I remember correctly, you couldn't hardly get much better than what we were doing, and you kind of wonder, is this really necessary? But
Yeah, well, the results were great last time, but still, it's been 5 years since the last one, so things definitely could have changed. So it's definitely, I think, time to do another survey. Typically, we do these every 2 to 3 years.
I think it's very important that we have a survey. It seems like cities of any size anymore are interested in surveys. We need to have a connect between the citizenry and the government. If we don't have that, we have lost pretty much the battle. It could have a lot of problems if you don't talk to your citizenry, you don't have them talk back to you. Short of a town hall meeting where 4,000 people show up, this is probably one of the best ways that you can keep your pulse on what the people are saying. I was wondering, what mathematical formula or sample do you use to determine how many surveys to send out? Is this something that's standardized across the world about, this is a number of people, the minimum number of people that you have to attempt to contact, or what? Why wouldn't, and I'm asking as a layman, I know nothing about this, but why wouldn't more be better?
Sure. Well, the more surveys you do, the smaller you shrink the margin of error. But 300 is about how many we typically do for a city of this size. At 300 surveys, the results at the 95% level of confidence, we have a margin of error of plus or minus 5.5%. So essentially that means if you did the same survey the same way 100 times, 95 times the results would be plus or minus 5.5% from what we're reporting. So that's a very typical number of surveys for a community of this size. If we did 400 surveys, for example, the margin of error would shrink from 5.5% to 5%. So we could do more surveys, but then the cost is more, and it just changes the margin of error a little bit. So that's 300.
There's a cost factor there to the city for doing more, numerically speaking.
Right. So yeah, that would be 300. It would be typical for a city of this size.
Thank you.
Sure.
I've got a couple of quick questions. Thank you for coming out tonight, showing us the survey. I like the survey. I try to stay engaged with my constituents. So as far as you're saying 300, I just want to make sure I understand the formula. So you're saying 300 surveys is what you want to collect, right? And how many people are you going to target? Did you say 1,800 households?
Yeah, about 1,800. That's how many we administered to it last time, and we do about that same number again.
Okay, all right. And let's see. As far as, doing a survey, I agree with Bill. I think it is important that we do a survey every so often. I think in this, didn't they say you wanted to do it every 2 years? Or somebody said they wanted to do it every 2 years? I think that's a little excessive. I think we could do it every 3 or 4, maybe 4 years, like we've done it so far now. Every 4 or 5 years, a new survey, but I don't know if we need to do it every 2 years. So that's another point that I wanted to bring up. And as far as where does the money come from, Eric, from the or Mike, from the survey?
It's in the
Like,
general fund.
From the general fund, okay.
Get anything?
Yeah, the survey, I'm not understanding, do they turn it in by hand to the city hall, or do they mail it back, or?
The survey is done by a combination of mail, online, and phone. And mainly it's mail and online anymore because phone is just anymore such a hard way to get a hold of people. So what we'll do is we'll mail the survey to these 1,800 randomly selected households. And along with the mailed survey, there'll be a return reply envelope addressed to ETC Institute, so they can fill it out, drop in the mail, and it comes back to us. And then the cover letter of that mailed survey will also have a link to an online version of the survey. So if residents want, they can go online to fill it out. And about a week after we mail those surveys, we'll send email follow-up to those households who got a survey in the mail. And the email will encourage residents to fill out the mailed survey if they haven't already, but it'll also contain a link to the online version of the survey if residents want to go online to fill it out. And then we'll send a second reminder email about a week after that. And at that point, usually we reach our target number of completed surveys. But if we haven't, then we'll do some follow-up phone calls and even maybe another follow-up email.
And how are you getting their emails to do a follow-up email?
We get all this information from the same source. We use a list brokerage firm called Info Group, and we've worked with them for many, many years. And they provide the mailing address, emails, and phone numbers.
And you answered my question. The 1,800 is just a random.
Right, they'll be selected at random. Yeah, every household has an equal chance of being selected, and then we just randomly select the 1,800.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anything else?
Is the council interested in adding any specific questions that, on particular topics that you might feel are important to try to get some kind of an opinion from folks? We have the capability of doing that if you like, and it's not required, but.
I read the survey pretty thoroughly, and it seems like it covers just about anything that you would want to know in generality. I mean, you were referring to some questions regarding each ward. I guess you would have to come up with something about your particular ward that you would want to have looked into, but I don't know about that and how much that would add to the cost of the survey.
I think the point of the ward was to be able to take those same stock questions and just know that they're, divide out the answers and know what ward they came from.
I understand.
So,
Okay, yeah.
but
That might be
again,
a-
that's kind of the point
Yeah.
was, would a given ward look at, the satisfaction with a
way, yeah.
particular service the same
Yeah.
as another, or is there a difference that we, and then that kind of makes you
I think that'd be an excellent, an
dive
excellent
down
idea.
and go, I wonder why that is.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that'd be an excellent idea. And I would have to kind of disagree with Zach in regard to the frequency of the survey. I think that 2 years would probably be a good minimum. I know that the other organizations, I don't know about jurisdictions of government, every time I go to the doctor, I get a survey. Every time you're a patient in the hospital, you get a survey. You could go out one day and come in the next day and get a survey. Now, they may be more deep pockets than we would want to be, but they find it quite important to find out what their people are doing and thinking and so on and so forth. So in my personal opinion, I don't think that 2 years is any too soon. That's just my thought.
I think, doing it every, let's see, it's been since 2012, every 4 or 5 years is adequate for us. As far as the surveys, when you go to the doctor's office and that sort of thing, it's usually if you're over 65. And the government wants it.
Well, if you had a real bad change from the previous survey, then you might want to do it within a year to find out what's happened. But as long as everything's good, I mean,
Yeah, like what the mayor said, if we get back one that's really bad or out of whack from the first one, yeah, we could have it the following year even. But I think in general, every 3 years, something like that would be plenty, personally.
What's it costing us each time we have it?
15,000.
15,000, I couldn't remember.
14,950 this time.
14,950.
I'd say 4 years is enough. I'd say 4 years is.
I have a question. Number 27, it says, "Are you Hispanic or Latino?" And number 8 says, "Which of the following best describes your race, ethnicity?" Why don't we just have Hispanic, Latino as one of the options on number 28? Because I'm Hispanic, I wanted to ask that question.
Sure. You know, the reason we ask it that way is because that's how it's asked on the U.S. Census. So we're just trying to make sure this matches up with that. Hispanic is considered really an ethnicity, and the others consider a race. I've heard the U.S. Census is considering doing that differently, but for now they still ask it that way.
Hey,
yes, sir.
you know, I think I would like to see that Latino on there just because we're getting such a change in our country. I wish I'd taken Spanish, you know, when I was young enough to remember anything. But I think I'd like to have that on there myself.
Anybody else?
What
If
do you
there aren't
wish us, what do you wish us to do?
Well, it's already budgeted, so we were assuming the council would wish to proceed. So, we would intend to proceed. The last recommendation was, I think at this point, we're close enough to the election, we'd suggest we do it after the election. But, my understanding is ETC would probably be prepared to do it just about any time that we ask. So
Right. Yeah.
sometime shortly after, the April election, we'd give them the go-ahead, let you know, and proceed.
Do we need to firm up the time frame on future ones, or do we just want to get this one over with and then discuss
I'll
that?
consider your input
at a later-
when we're preparing future budgets.
Okay.
So I don't think you need to
Fine.
necessarily tonight.
Move it forward.
Thank you for coming.
Move to adjourn.
So we'll be bringing a contract forward to council here in the next meeting or two to go ahead and firm that up, and then we'll proceed.
That's good.
Move to adjourn?
Yes, move to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm just joking.